Welcome to the second episode, or El Segundo, as they would call it in Miami. You can appreciate my accent, I'm sure. I've lived here for 2 years and I still can't speak a lick of Spanish. Not to mention, I took 5 years of Spanish in high school. But nonetheless, El Segundo, the second. So, history was made yesterday, and if you haven't heard by now, I'm not sure if you live under a rock or not, but a man jumped from space. Yes, a man jumped from space. It was 24 miles above Earth, which actually isn't space. I Googled how high is space, and they tell me it's somewhere between 50 miles to 70 miles, depending on who you ask. This guy, Felix Baumgartner, in partnership with Red Bull, and this other guy, Colonel Kittinger, who jumped from space in 1960, who knew? They did a project called the Red Bull Stratus, and essentially it was filling a giant helium balloon with helium, go figure, and sending it up above New Mexico with a small capsule attached to it, and inside of said capsule was a crazy Austrian skydiver. So this guy does skydiving and base jumping and all of that, and decided one day he needed to jump from space. Now, there's a lot of things that I will do. I've been bungee jumping. I love roller coasters. I even signed up for skydiving. I had an appointment. I went and everything, but it got canceled because of weather. But I would say that jumping from space is probably on the list of things I would not do. So he was 128,000 feet above Earth when he jumped, which was a record, beating Colonel Kittinger by about 25,000 feet. In this time he jumped, he was free falling for just under 4.5 minutes, and he reached a speed of 833.9 miles per hour. That's incredible. It's Mach 1.24, so Mach 1 being the speed of sound. He exceeded the speed of sound, first person to ever do it. Broke a ton of records, and the guy lands, and he lands on his feet, and he does this triumphant hands up in the air thing, and it was a really great moment to watch live, me and 7 or 8 million other people on YouTube, and kind of a cool moment in history. I really was impressed with the way that Red Bull and YouTube put it together. They had, live feeds inside the capsule, and they had really cool pictures that came out of it, and they had the stats on the screen. At one point they said the air pressure, how much time he had left in his oxygen tank. They made it real dramatic, but really exciting. It was cool. There was a moment where I thought he died. Yep. He was doing what they call a flat spin, and apparently this is the worst thing that could possibly happen to somebody who is jumping from space. I guess. And what can happen is there's too much G-force put on the body, and instead of blood rushing from your head and you blacking out, what happens is blood rushes to your head and you red out, or your brain hemorrhages and your eyes explode and all sorts of terrible things. And in the press conference, he spoke about how he was able to get out of this spin. And really, the only reason why he didn't hit his emergency chute at this time was because he knew he wanted to break the record and break the speed of sound. Now, that's pretty gutsy. I'm pretty sure if I'm in his shoes and I am falling from space and I'm going into a flat spin where my brain and eyeballs are going to explode, I am pulling the chute. I don't care about the record. I don't care about the money that Red Bull's put on the line. But, hey, he did it, and it was pretty cool to see. Like I said, I really like stats. So I was kind of drawn to this whole thing, records and stats. And actually, none of that information, the speeds and distances, do I have written down. I have what I think is some sort of disorder. Some people call it a gift. I think it's a disorder that I can remember numbers. Some people also call me Rain Man or so on and so forth. But for whatever reason, I can remember numbers. I can do math very quickly in my head. I remember phone numbers from years and years and years ago. I could tell you the phone number to a taxi company back where I'm from that I probably haven't dialed in 15 years, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be accurate. I don't know why. I don't know why numbers have always been this thing that I can remember, but I've always been obsessed with stats. I love statistics. I love trying to figure out different stats, and I've always dreamed, right, and thought, like, what if I could have stats about my life? There was a video game, you've all heard of Grand Theft Auto, and it always had, how many miles you've ran and how many miles you've driven and how many police chases have you been in and how long have the police chases lasted. And I've always wanted that from my life. And they have pedometers and they have all sorts of things nowadays that you can hook up to your phone and you wear sorts of sensors. But maybe when I die, maybe that's what I get. Maybe that's like if I make it to heaven, I get statistics. That would be my heaven. You talk about people, oh, heaven is whatever you want it to be. That would be my heaven. If I was told when I got there, did you know you walked, X amount of miles in your lifetime and you consumed, 300 tons of food? But I would want unlimited stats. I would want stats for every single thing that's out there. That would be my heaven. If I could go and figure out, how many miles I've ran or how high I've jumped or what was my highest jump. I can jump high too. It's another weird thing. How high have I jumped? I would want to know to the inch. And maybe if there was like a video replay screen and maybe if they had like some commentators, I think that would make me happy. I'm going to add that to my heaven list. But my love of statistics and my love of stats has been made worse by my new hobby, which, if you're listening to, you realize is podcasting. So I've never really had a website. I guess, I've had one as a kid, make a little website that just says your name or whatever. But this is the first venture I've had into the internet and doing podcasting. And now with this site that I have my podcast on and with iTunes, I get a ton of stats. I can tell who's seen my website, who's seen my podcast, who's listened to it, who's subscribed on iTunes, what country they're from, all sorts of information. It's kind of taken over my life. I check these stats hourly, and every single day when I wake up, it's the first thing I do, and it's cool, and I like seeing how well my podcast is doing or how poorly it's doing, and being able to make decisions to try to change that. So my website, which when we last spoke, I had no idea how I was going to distribute this, but now I've got a website, I've got a Facebook page, I'm on iTunes, and we'll talk about all of that later. But my website has become pretty fun, actually, and I really do enjoy this. And one of the things I need to get better at, though, is marketing it. So I know that, especially nowadays, marketing is so big in social media, and I've been on Facebook. I was on Facebook. I think I joined in like 2004, 2005, whenever it came out, and it got to my school. And I remember it was thefacebook.com, and I've been on Facebook for many years now at this point, and I'm pretty comfortable with Facebook, but really just as a personal tool, putting up pictures and posting statuses about the debate the other night or whatever it may be. But I've never really used it as a marketing tool. So, my podcast came out and I figured out how to put it on the internet, how to publish it, and I started sending messages to my friends, and most of them were annoyed, but some of them listened. One of my reviews that I got through Facebook, which I really appreciated, was, and I quote, "I like your podcast, even though I hate you." So I appreciated that. Thanks, Matt. But anyway, so Facebook, I'm trying to figure out how to market on Facebook. I'm trying to figure out how to get the word out there. And, in thinking, I also know that Twitter is a great tool for this. Now, I'm terrible on Twitter. Terrible. I don't know how to use it. I don't really understand it. And I just follow celebrities and comedians and stuff that I like, and then I just desperately tweet at them and hope that they'll retweet my things, and so far unsuccessful. So I'm trying. For me, Twitter is a lot more challenging. I feel like though it's very public, it's also, in a way, kind of, I'm not sure. I don't know. It's public, but it's out there, and I want to get it out there, but there's only 8 people right now that are following me. So it's only as public as those 8 people choose to look at my Twitter. I need to get better at that. I need to get more followers. I'm not sure how to do that, but I'm working on it. One way that I could get more followers is if you followed me. So if you're listening to this, you can follow me at, right, that's the thing you're supposed to say, at not that Pauly D. And Pauly is with a Y. That's my Facebook as well. If you want to follow me or like me on Facebook, facebook.com/notthatpaulyd. You can find me on iTunes now by searching Not That Pauly D, and the podcast will come up. Or you can even go to my website at notthatpaulyd.com, and you can see all the podcasts. You can email me. You can get the Facebook and Twitter and iTunes links directly from there as well. Lots of different ways to get in touch with me. Like I said, I've become a little bit obsessed with this, and I'm trying my hardest to market it and to get the information out there, and also learn a couple things about how to use the internet to market yourself and publish a podcast. So it's been a lot of fun. Social media, I need to get better at it, but I will. And with your help, I will. The other thing I want to add is that if you choose to donate to the show, I would greatly appreciate it. The show is free to all of you, so I hope the entertainment value is worth lots of money, and because of that you choose to donate. You can also do that at notthatpaulyd.com. But that's enough plugs. I also thought about plug overload, and I think I'm getting to that point where I'm at plug overload. So I want to tell you a quick story. Like I mentioned last week in my podcast, I've been trying to pay a little bit more attention to some of the odd things that are going around in the world and around my world, I suppose I could say. And, the space jump was one of them. The guy jumped from space. But Lindsay and I, my girlfriend Lindsay, went out to dinner the other night, and we went to the Cheesecake Factory. Not all that fancy of a place, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, a step above Chili's, right, or a step above the Fridays chain. So it's a little bit nicer, maybe a little more expensive, and really the only reason we went is because we haven't been there in a while, and there was no wait. So just the two of us, we went to the Cheesecake Factory, and it was a Saturday night, so it was a little busy, and if you've ever been to a restaurant on a busy night, especially if it's just you and another person, they've got this area where they try to fit in as many of these skinny tables as possible. Now, these tables are typically very narrow, maybe only as wide as my shoulders or maybe a little bit wider. And for some reason, they're usually a little bit longer, like almost awkwardly long, where you have to lean in to talk to the person a little bit too much, because you're too far away to speak at a natural volume. But anyway, we go to the Cheesecake Factory. They sit us at one of these tables, and now they've got a section with all of these tables. There's probably a 25-foot row of these tables, and they fit as many of these little tables in as possible. And on the back end, there's a bench, almost like a big open booth, and then on the other side, there's chairs where the other person would sit in an individual chair. So there's a bench on one side and then a chair on the other. So we get to our table, and it was relatively empty except for the table to our left. So the table to our left was another couple, a little bit older than us, maybe in the 30s or early 40s. The guy looked kind of like John Stamos, Uncle Jesse from Full House. It was kind of weird. Not the Greek yogurt John Stamos, but the John Stamos with the hair from Full House. And anyway, he's with his girlfriend or his wife or whatever it may be, and they're sitting on the same side of the table, of this small table. So now, again, remember, this table is only as wide as my shoulders, or maybe a little bit wider, maybe 2 or 3 feet. So they're sitting on the same side of the table. Now, there's probably one or too many tables squeezed into this 25-foot space, and they're sitting on the same side of the table. Now, I know that maybe it's romantic or something. I don't know. For me, it was a little bit odd, right? For these two people to be sitting on the same side of the table like this, and they didn't get it, right? Like, Lindsay had to sit down, literally like touching one of them because she was so close with her leg. And they still sat there, and they were sharing a plate, and they were sitting so close to each other, and then so close to us, that it was obvious that it was uncomfortable, and it was obvious that it was wrong, right? So eventually, the girl who was sitting closer to Lindsay realizes this, and she actually even had her bag next to her to like create this boundary, like, hey, listen, everything on the side of this bag is my space. Even though I shouldn't be sitting here, don't cross the bag. So she eventually realizes, she picks up the bag, she moves to the proper table. Now she's sitting to my left, the guy is sitting to Lindsay's right. You can do the math, that's a nice little visual. and everything's good. Everything's copacetic, and we're eating dinner, and it's nice. And our waiter was a little strange, but everything was fine. Now the girl gets up, and she goes to use the restroom, and she's gone for a couple of minutes. And when she returns, John Stamos looks at her and does the classic, pat your hand on the chair, come sit next to me signal. Again, on the same side of Lindsay. So now there's that small space between John Stamos and Lindsay, and John Stamos decides that it's important that the girlfriend comes and sits back next to him in this awkwardly small space. So he does I'm going to pat on the chair between Lindsay and I and instruct my girlfriend to come sit here. So, being a good girlfriend, I suppose she did, and now we're back in awkward space. So, again, I get it. Maybe you're trying to be romantic. I don't know. Maybe not my thing. But a minute after John Stamos asks her to sit back down, he picks up his phone. And now he's talking on the phone at dinner in a restaurant. Again, I understand. It's the Cheesecake Factory. It's not anything fancy. I get it. But have a little bit of etiquette. Talking on the phone with his girlfriend sitting right next to him in an awkwardly uncomfortable space between John Stamos and Lindsay. And he's talking on the phone. And he talked on the phone for probably, 10 or 15 minutes. It was very strange. And it's just one of those things where I wonder if people think before they do things like that. There was actually another guy at the restaurant that was on the phone. He was talking to somebody about the Yankees. The Yankees were playing that night. I think that was the night that they actually beat the Orioles and they won the playoff series. And he's on the phone. Now he's got headphones in and a microphone. And something happened, and the Yankees won. I think the pitcher, it was CC Sabathia. I could be totally wrong on that. But I believe he said something like, CC got a complete game. And then at this point, the waiter came over. And this guy was like 45 or 50. He was definitely an older guy. And the waiter comes over and asks for his order. And he's on the phone with his friend talking about the Yankees. And again, 45 or 50, he exclaims, "Yeah, boy!" Like Flava Flav might do, in a more appropriate situation, I suppose. But that was the exclamation that this guy decided on, based on the Yankees winning this game at a restaurant in a confined space while on the phone in the waiter's face. I don't get it. Who knows? Maybe I was raised differently, or maybe. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I care too much. I don't know. Speaking of how I was raised, a quick shout out. It's my parents' 29th anniversary, so happy anniversary. Yeah, I don't know. So, the one other thing I talked about last week was the internet. And I talked about Groupon. And I've actually used a Groupon since I went to the movies. I saw the movie Pitch Perfect. It was actually pretty funny. For some reason, I really appreciate a cappella music, and it was cool. But one of the other things I was thinking about that I frequent on the internet, and I probably shouldn't, because I would call myself a little bit of a hypochondriac. I've done a good job of controlling that, and I've done a good job to convince myself of otherwise when I think that I'm dying. But there's a website on the internet, and it is probably the worst website for anybody that is even a slight hypochondriac, and I think you all know what I'm talking about. It's WebMD. So, WebMD, I've often said, should change its tagline to something like 3 clicks from a terminal disease, or something like that, or, click here and we'll tell you to go to the hospital. That one's not as catchy. But it's the worst. It really is the worst. Like, you could have a stomach ache and you could wonder what's going on, and maybe you're just looking to see what type of pill you should take, or what kind of food or fluids you should drink, and all of a sudden you think you have stomach cancer. I was kind of just playing around to see for the purpose of this exercise, and I chose lower back pain as a symptom. They have like this thing where it's a guy, and you can click on him, and you could say, this is where the pain is, and here's what type of pain it is. And all right, come on. Who doesn't have lower back pain? So I chose lower back pain. I have lower back pain. My back hurts. I don't know. I sit a lot, and I have this couch that really sucks. Can't wait to get rid of it. And I have back pain. Who doesn't have back pain? So I click lower back pain, and it asks me a couple of questions. How severe is the pain? Does it change when you ice it? Does it change when you press on it? And I answered them honestly, right? Yeah, it gets better when I ice it. It gets better when I take medicine. It doesn't change when I press on it, or I just have a sore lower back. And the third thing on the list was this like horrible spinal disease that just totally disables you, and you're gonna die soon. And there was this big red cross that said "Get to the emergency room soon," and it was crazy, right? Lower back pain, and all of a sudden I have some sort of crazy spinal disease. I don't know. I don't know why WebMD has become as popular as it has. It's clearly way off. It's become a joke for many people, and I don't get it. Spinal diseases typically aren't what happens when you have lower back pain. It typically just means you need a massage. But hey, I'm no doctor. So anyway, with massages, there's one other thing that I wanted to share. So I am a sucker for spending money. I talked about this a little bit last week, and I went out to get a couple drinks about 2 weeks ago with my girlfriend, and we went to a place called Brother Jimmy's. And Brother Jimmy's on Saturdays during the afternoon, right? So day drinking, perfect. And it was a nice day. It was beautiful out. There was football on. I got a couple beers. I got a couple wings. It was unlimited beers and unlimited wings. I think I had like 3 or 4 beers and some wings over 4 or 5 hours. So nothing crazy, right? Now we decide to go. We decide to go home. And in that process, we walked past a new business that had opened right near this bar. And that business was called Massage Envy. Massage Envy, if you don't know, is a massage parlor, I guess. That sounds kind of skeevy. I don't know. It's a massage store where you pay per month for a massage. All right, so it's a subscription based. It's like a gym membership. And they have annual memberships, and it's like $49 a month, or $59 a month, something like that, and you get a massage every month, which really isn't that bad of a deal if you use it. But their whole gimmick is your first massage is really cheap. I think the first massage is $39. So this place just opens. Lindsay and I walk past, and we walk in and we decide, hey, why don't we get massages? 2 massages, $39 each. Can't beat that deal. They even had like the couples room, so we were in the same room. $78 for a couples massage is a good deal. And we figured, hey, we're never going to do this again. We're never going to come back. Perfect. $78, one-time deal. No problem. So the massage was great. We walk out, and when we're paying, they have a hard sales pitch, a very hard sales pitch. Such a hard sales pitch that I signed a 12-month contract. And let me tell you, this contract is ironclad. So, so I am now paying $100 a month, I think, for Lindsay and I to get massages, 1 per month for the next 12 months. That was probably a bad decision, but they got me. They got me. So I will not have lower back pain because of that. And because of that, I will not go on WebMD, and I will not think that I have a degenerative spinal disease. So at the end of the story, all's well that ends well. That's all I've got for you this time, guys. I really enjoy doing this, and I'm probably going to do this once, maybe even twice a week, as I get more comfortable and as I get more material. I'm doing my best to try to go off the cuff, do this on one take, but I have a couple of notes here and there that I'm writing as I think about these things. Like I said, now that this podcast is out there, I've actually been heard in 5 countries, so I'm indisputably an international podcast artist. So, how can you find me? How can you listen? How can you subscribe? How can you tell people about it? And how can you give me money? So, let's go in order. NotThatPaulyD.com is my website. All the information is there. That's probably the easiest place to go. My Facebook is there, which is facebook.com/NotThatPaulyD. My Twitter is there, which is @NotThatPaulyD. You can email me on there. You can even leave me a voice message on there, which is cool. Maybe if I get some good ones, I'll play them on the air, I guess we'll call this, and I'll comment on them. If you have a question, feel free to ask me a question. I'll answer it. We'll turn this into a Q&A. But most importantly, on that website is a donate button. So if you are so inclined to make a donation to help support this show, it costs me money to host the podcast and the equipment and all of that, I would be greatly appreciative of that. If you want, I can give you a shout out to all of my many international followers and listeners. If you want me to plug something for you, I'd be more than happy to do that as well. And I actually did receive my first donation last week. So if you remember last week, I talked about my journey to the post office, and I received a donation from the person who I also called the queen of the internet last week, who I think she was upset about that. She told me something else, but I forgot. But anyway, she donated to me 47 cents, and the comment was for a stamp. So I received my first donation, and I can now go out and purchase a very high-end first-class stamp. So thank you. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, hit all the buttons on my website. It'll make me happy, and it's going to give me more statistics to look at. So, until next time, this has been the Not That Pauly D Show.